Everywhere you go today, you will leave something behind, not just on the ground, not just in the places you pass through. You will leave something in the people you meet, in the tone of a room, in a conversation, in a memory, in the courage somebody feels after being with you, or in the discouragement they carry away. And that means this: whether we think about it or not, we already have a spiritual footprint. Not someday, not only at the end of life, not only if we become famous, influential, or remembered by many. Even now, in the quiet details of ordinary life, we are leaving traces of ourselves behind. Most of us hear the word legacy and think of the extraordinary. We think of big accomplishments, major platforms, public impact, history book lives, but the evidence around kindness and connection points in a much humbler direction. Pro-social behavior is linked with higher well-being. Acts of kindness can strengthen social connection, and close relationships remain central to a healthy and meaningful life. So maybe the deepest thing we leave behind is not something impressive. Maybe it is something human. Maybe it is the way a person feels after we have listened to them, encouraged them, forgiven them, welcomed them, or simply made life a little lighter for them. Maybe your most important footprint is not your resume. Maybe it is your atmosphere. One of the most hopeful findings in this area is that people usually underestimate how much their kindness matters. In experimental studies, performers saw their actions as relatively small, but recipients felt more positive than the givers expected. The warmth behind the act mattered more than the giver realized. That means the kind text you almost did not send may matter. The encouraging comment you thought was too small may matter. The extra patience, the ride home, the note, the meal, the apology, the moment you stop rushing and really see another person. One of the reasons we hold back is that we think it's not a big enough gesture. But maybe the soul does not measure impact the way the ego does. Maybe what changes a day, a heart, or even a life is often not dramatic at all. Maybe it is simply a moment of warmth in a world that has become too efficient and too cold. And sometimes the deepest spiritual footprint is not what you give, it is how you listen. Research on high-quality listening suggests that when people feel listened to without judgment, they become less defensive, gain more self-insight, and can become more open-minded. In other words, real listening does not just make people feel polite conversation happened, it can create space inside them. Think about how rare that is, to be with someone who is not waiting for their turn to speak, not trying to fix you too quickly, not turning your pain into their advice, not scanning their phone while you are opening your heart. To be deeply listened to is to be told without words, "You are not a problem to rush past. You are a person I am willing to stay with." That leaves a footprint, sometimes for years. But we should tell the truth, too. We do not only leave footprints of peace, we can also leave footprints of hurry, of sarcasm, of distraction, of emotional absence, of making other people feel small without even intending to. Sometimes we walk out of a conversation and think nothing happened, but the other person walks away carrying our tone. This part is not about shame, it is about awakening. Because spiritual maturity is not pretending we are always gentle. It is becoming conscious of the kind of trace we are leaving. Every day, in very small ways, we are answering a sacred question. When people encounter me, do they leave feeling more defended or more at ease? More diminished or more dignified? More alone or more accompanied? Why does this matter so much? Because goodness rarely stops where we leave it. Experimental research on cooperation suggests that helpful behavior can cascade through social networks across multiple degrees of separation. In plain language, one act can become another and then another. You speak gently to someone who is bracing for criticism, they go home with less weight in their chest. Because they feel a little less burdened, they answer their child with more patience. That child grows up remembering not a perfect parent, but a moment of mercy. And one day that mercy appears again in another room, in another family, in another life. You may never see that chain. Most spiritual footprints are invisible to the person leaving them. Some of the holiest work you will ever do may be work you never get credit for. A long-running study on adult development has kept returning to a simple lesson. Community and close relationships matter enormously for living longer and happier. Public health guidance also warns that weak social connection is not a minor issue. It carries real health consequences. And newer kindness interventions suggest that even small, regular acts of kindness can reduce loneliness-related distress. So the spiritual question is not only, what do I believe? It is also, what kind of human experience do I want to create around me? What do people encounter when they encounter me? Do they meet pressure? Do they meet performance? Do they meet anxiety, speed, and self-importance? Or do they meet some trace of steadiness, some trace of kindness, some trace of compassion, some trace of room to breathe? Because that too is spirituality. Not only what we contemplate in silence, but what other people feel in our presence. If you want to leave better spiritual footprints, start small. Before you enter a room, pause for one breath and ask, what do I want to bring in here? When you are tempted to be merely efficient, add 1 ounce of warmth. Ask one real question each day and stay long enough to hear the answer. If you create a wound, repair it sooner. Do not let ego turn a small fracture into a deeper scar. And practice one hidden act of goodness on a regular basis. Not for image, not for applause, just to become the kind person whose presence leaves blessings behind. Even a very small recurring act may be worth practicing. One large community study found that as little as 1 act of kindness a week was associated with measurable improvements in loneliness-related outcomes. At the end of the day, ask yourself, not only, what did I finish? Ask, what did I leave behind? Maybe you will never fully know your spiritual footprint. You may never know who kept going because you encouraged them, who softened because you listened, who felt human again because you treated them with dignity, who passed your kindness forward in a form you would never recognize. But hidden does not mean small. If goodness can ripple, if kindness can matter more than we think, if people can carry the warmth of a moment farther than we ever see, then the life we are building is larger than the movements we can measure. So today, leave one footprint of goodness, one moment of patience, one act of courage, one interruption of cruelty, one reminder that another human being is not alone. And trust that some of the best parts of your life may be the goodness you leave behind. If this reflection spoke to you, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What kind of spiritual footprint do you hope to leave in the world? And maybe even more simply, who is someone whose goodness still walks with you? If you think more people could use this kind of reflection, please like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who may need to remember that even small acts of kindness can echo farther than we ever see. Thank you for being here. And as always, may we keep growing in wisdom, compassion, and the quiet goodness we leave behind.